Let me tell you what a front office looks like when it actually knows what it is doing. Not the version that generates press release language about building for the future, while making decisions that contradict that language at every turn. The version that moves with purpose and precision, and an internal coherence that makes every individual decision connected reactions to whatever the current roster situation demands. This past week in Las Vegas produced 4 distinct moves that individually would each deserve real attention. Together, they form a picture of an organization that has figured out exactly what it is building and is executing that vision with a clarity that this franchise has not demonstrated in a very long time. A hometown kid who grew up in the shadow of a leader through raw competitive performance. A 6'6" offensive lineman from Canada got poached from the CFL before he played a single professional snap. A veteran tackle with first-round credentials is being linked to the most vulnerable spot on the offensive line. And a former top 20 pick was shown the door cleanly and without ceremony, because this roster has no space for what someone used to be. Every one of those decisions points in the same direction. Let me walk you through all of it. Start with Jonathan Brady, because his story is the one that hits differently when you understand the full context of how he arrived in that building and what his presence there actually means for Fernando Mendoza's development. Brady came into rookie minicamp on a pure tryout basis. No guaranteed contract, no organizational commitment of any kind beyond the invitation to come in, compete, and demonstrate whether he belongs in this professional environment. Hundreds of players receive that kind of invitation, and the overwhelming majority of them go home at the end of the tryout period without a deal to show for it. The competition is that ruthless, and the margin between making an impression and disappearing back into the undrafted pool is that thin. Brady made his impression. He did enough in that limited window to earn himself a contract with the Las Vegas Raiders, and that alone would be a compelling story about a young player seizing an opportunity when it appeared. But the reason I think this signing deserves more than a passing mention in the context of what this front office is building is the specific relationship Brady carries into that building with him. He played alongside Fernando Mendoza at California in 2024 before following him to Indiana, which means these two have spent 2 full college seasons operating in the same offensive system, running the same concepts, building the specific shared understanding between a quarterback and a receiver that only develops through hundreds of real competitive repetitions together. 50 catches, 501 yards. Those are not spectacular statistical outputs, but they are not the point. The point is the accumulated knowledge that those 2 seasons of genuine partnership produced. Brady knows how Mendoza moves through his dropback. He knows the release point, the ball placement tendencies, the way Mendoza trusts certain routes in certain coverage situations, and the throws he makes when the first read is taken away. That knowledge cannot be installed through a playbook or a film session. It gets built through real shared reps over real time, and Brady already has it in a way that no other receiver in that building currently possesses. Think about what that means for a rookie quarterback who is already working overtime to absorb Clint Kubiak's entire offensive system from scratch. Every hour Mendoza spends with a receiver who already speaks his football language, who already understands intuitively where the ball is going to arrive and why, is an hour of developmental efficiency that cannot be purchased through normal roster construction. Chemistry of that kind between a quarterback and a receiver is the thing front offices dream about discovering in the draft and rarely find. This organization found it already built, recognized it as the asset it is, and locked it in fast when Brady demonstrated he could compete at the professional level during minicamp. That is sharp roster building. That is understanding that cultural and relational infrastructure around a franchise quarterback has real competitive value that shows up in places statistics do not always capture immediately. The local dimension of Brady's story adds something that I think matters, even if it is harder to quantify in a traditional roster analysis. He is from Las Vegas. He grew up here, played his high school football at Bishop Gorman, and now he has earned a contract with the franchise that represents the city he comes from. The Raiders front office has spoken openly about understanding that culture and connection within a locker room are not soft concepts to be acknowledged and then set aside in favor of purely transactional roster decisions. Brady being in that building is another expression of that understanding. He is not there because the organization did him a favor. He earned it. But the fact that the front office recognized the full picture of what he brings, the Mendoza chemistry, the special teams value from his second-team All-Big Ten return specialist recognition, and the cultural resonance of a hometown player fighting his way onto the roster suggests an organizational awareness of the multiple dimensions of value that the simplest version of roster construction tends to overlook. Now let me take you to Canada, because this is the move that told me the most about how this front office is willing to think about the problem of building an offensive line around a first overall pick. pick. Nicholas Henning was the second overall selection in the CFL draft. The Toronto Argonauts had him. He had never played a professional snap at any level. And the Raiders went out and signed him before he set foot on a CFL practice field, which means they were operating on pure college tape from Queen's University in Canada, cross-referencing that evaluation with whatever information their scouting process had generated, and deciding that the developmental potential was real enough to act on before another professional league had a chance to develop him and potentially make him unavailable. I want to be direct about what Henning is and is not at this stage, because overreacting to a developmental signing in the wrong direction is just as much a mistake as underreacting. He is not coming in to start at right tackle in week 1 of the 2026 season. He is under 300 pounds right now, which means he needs to add significant functional weight before he can consistently handle NFL-caliber defensive ends who are already built for the level he is trying to reach. Those physical requirements take time and proper developmental support. Nobody within this organization is pretending otherwise, but the physical foundation underneath the current weight is genuinely intriguing. 6 feet 6 inches of frame with the movement quality and positional versatility that allowed him to earn second-team All-Canadian honors at 2 different positions across his college career, starting at H-back and tight end before transitioning to offensive tackle and excelling there as well. That kind of positional adaptability is not something coaches teach into a player. It comes from a specific kind of football intelligence and body awareness that translates across levels when the developmental conditions are right. The detail that caught my attention most when I was looking at Henning's background is that he helped anchor a championship offensive line at Queen's. Championship offensive linemen, even at the college level in Canada, develop specific habits of technique and preparation that show up in how they approach professional coaching. They have already been in high-stakes situations. They have already been asked to perform when the competitive consequences were real. That experience does not make them NFL ready, but it shapes the mental framework they bring into a developmental environment in ways that matter when a coaching staff is trying to accelerate a player's growth curve. The Raiders identified something worth developing here. The move to get ahead of the CFL before Henning played a snap there is the kind of proactive scouting that separates organizations that find diamonds from the ones that watch other teams pull them out of the ground. The Jonah Williams conversation is where I want to spend the most time because it represents the most consequential pending decision surrounding this offensive line, and the one that will say the most about whether this front office is willing to make the difficult investment required to fully protect what they just built around Mendoza. Williams is 28 years old. He came into this league as a first-round selection and has spent his professional career developing the technical foundation at offensive tackle that you cannot simply draft or develop on a short timeline. The footwork, the hand placement discipline, the ability to process complex pass rush games from elite defensive ends who have spent years developing their own counter moves and counters to counters. Those things accumulate through professional experience, through being in real games against real competition with real franchise consequences attached. And Williams has been building that accumulation for 5 seasons. The right tackle position in Las Vegas has been an inconsistency problem, and the word inconsistency in this context carries more weight than it might in a discussion about a different team at a different organizational moment. The Raiders just used the first overall pick on a quarterback. They spent a 3rd-round selection on Trey Zhu to add to the interior line. They brought in Tyler Linderbaum caliber infrastructure at the center position. They have made a series of investments that collectively communicate a single organizational priority: build a wall around Mendoza and give him the best possible conditions to develop into the franchise quarterback his tape suggests he can be. Leaving the right tackle position as the one unresolved vulnerability in that wall after all of those other investments would be the single decision that undermines the coherence of everything else this front office has done this offseason. Williams at approximately $10 million annually against the salary cap is not a trivial commitment. I understand that, but the Raiders entered the month of May with roughly $20 million in available cap space, which means signing Williams would consume half of that flexibility while addressing the single most pressing remaining vulnerability in the protection scheme around their franchise quarterback. The alternative is rolling into training camp with a right tackle situation that the coaching staff and the front office privately know is not resolved, hoping that a young player can make a jump significant enough under live competitive pressure to provide the consistency this offense needs on the right side. That is a gamble on a development timeline that may or may not align with Mendoza's most critical developmental window. Jonah Williams removes that gamble entirely. He is a known quantity at a position of critical importance, and the investment required to bring him in fits within the financial framework framework this organization is working with. Williams would not be reckless spending. He would be the logical completion of a roster construction project that has been building toward this specific outcome all offseason. And then there is Jamon Davis, and I want to handle this one with the honesty it deserves because the human dimension of it sits uncomfortably alongside the organizational logic that produced it. Davis was a 19th overall pick out of Kentucky. That draft position carries the weight of franchise investment and public expectation. In the years that followed that selection, his career became a difficult series of organizational transitions that prevented him from ever finding the consistent environment a player needs to develop the way his initial evaluation suggested he could. Released by Washington partway through his fourth professional season, practice squad stints in Green Bay, claims in Minnesota, 4 games with the Jets before being released again. Brief reintegration into the Jet system followed by another cut during final roster trimming. Then Las Vegas, where he worked his way from the practice squad to the active roster, appeared in 2 games with 1 start, and recorded 3 combined tackles before the organization made the decision to move on the day before rookie minicamp opened. He is 26 years old. That fact makes the whole arc harder to sit with. A player with genuine physical gifts who entered the NFL as a top 20 selection and never found an environment where those gifts could develop into consistent professional production. The NFL's brutality in that specific category, the category of talent that never finds the right alignment of coaching, scheme, and organizational stability to become what the physical tools suggested it could, is something I find genuinely difficult to observe without some sense of loss for what the career might have been under different circumstances. But I also believe in being honest about what the decision represents from the Raiders' perspective, because I think pretending it is complicated does a disservice to the clarity of vision this front office has been demonstrating. They are building something specific. Rob Leonard's defensive scheme requires specific player profiles at linebacker, and Davis did not fit those profiles in a way that justified carrying him on the roster through minicamp and into the summer. Releasing him before minicamp opened is the clean professional decision. It maximizes his time to connect with another organization while keeping the Raiders' evaluation process focused entirely on the players who are part of the picture they are actually building. Sentiment has no place in that calculation, and a front office that understood the difference between those two things made the correct organizational choice. What I keep returning to when I look at all of these moves together is the coherence of the vision underneath them. Brady earns his contract through performance and brings the Mendoza chemistry that no other signing could replicate. Henning gets poached from Canada because the physical foundation is worth developing before someone else gets that opportunity. Williams is being linked to the right tackle position because completing the protection around Mendoza is the logical and necessary final step in the offensive line investment this offseason has been building toward. Davis is released cleanly because this roster is being built around what players are right now and what they can become, not around what they were when someone else drafted them in a different era. Every single one of those decisions reflects the same internal framework, the same clarity about what this organization is building and what it needs to get there. That kind of organizational coherence is rarer than it looks from the outside, and it has been absent in Las Vegas for long enough that seeing it operate this visibly and this consistently through a single minicamp week is something worth recognizing for exactly what it is.